Reset with Raven family. When I move, you move just like that. Shake, pop, drop, bounce, and dip it low. Okay. All jokes aside, welcome everyone. If you haven't already figured it out, this week we're talking about movement and movement for healing. Joining me today is Angela Berrett. Angie is a nurse, movement coach, and yoga instructor. She's created a proprietary way of moving that can decrease anxiety, depression, stress, and PTSD. Whew. We all need some of this type of movement in our lives right now. I feel like the world does. So
Yes.
I am excited to jump into this discussion. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, Raven. Welcome. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for being here. Angie, what really drew me into your story and what you've been able to accomplish in your life is that your background and training is in healthcare, similar to mine. I'm not clinical though, but you've had 20 years of experience in the healthcare field and you decided to pivot. Start to and talk to us about what that was like for you. What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Raven said, I've been in the healthcare for over 20 years. I've been a registered nurse for almost 19. And most of my work was done in emergency departments and ICUs. So I've done high acuity nursing, I've worked in traumas, I've done critical care. And as the years went on, the toll got more and more. It is very challenging to take care of someone and to always be at that heightened level of working. And I actually had a patient assault a number of years ago. I had a patient assault me and messed up my back pretty bad. And so that took a little while for healing. I ended up having to leave patient care and I got into education and teaching. And I still just was struggling. I was having a hard time finding happiness. I enjoyed helping people, but I kind of felt like I was more caring for them after things were too late, after they've had the heart attack or after they lost a leg because they hadn't managed their diabetes very well or whatever it was. I felt like I was more reactive than proactive. So I decided to go to graduate school and I started a master's program to become a nurse practitioner. And I made it halfway through the program and I realized that I did not enjoy it. It was not for me. I loved what I was learning and I loved the idea of still being able to help people. And I didn't like just the thought. I felt like I was just writing prescriptions. I once again didn't feel like I was really being proactive and helping people necessarily change lifestyles. And I was struggling with, did I really want to continue paying the money and continue on with the time to become a nurse practitioner? So I took a break. I took a sabbatical and decided to, on my sabbatical, I practiced yoga for a number of years. And while I was on my sabbatical, the yoga studio that I practiced at was offering a yoga teacher training. And so I took the yoga teacher training and I fell in love with it. The way that I was going to now be able to help people be more proactive. Yoga has so many benefits. There have been so many scientific studies done that show that yoga helps to prevent, helps to heal. And so I switched. I started a yoga business and I've been mostly working yoga since then. I have gone back a little bit here and there with COVID to work as a nurse to help out. But for the most part, I teach yoga now, teach yoga and movement.
That is awesome. One of the things like I'm grappling with as you're sharing like this, I feel like this transformation, this change of like careers is how are you able to make such a bold decision. I feel like so many times, me included, like as someone who has numerous passions and interests, you feel like, well, I've been going down this one road, or I've invested 20 years into a particular field. I'm in school. I have student loan debt.
Yes.
How were you able, because you touched on this and you said, talked about finding happiness. Talk to us about like what that decision was like to even take the sabbatical, thinking about like what you've already invested in your career, in the training, the experience. Talk to us a little bit more about how you were able to make that decision and what was kind of like that deciding factor.
That is a very good question. And I think it was, well, some other things that happened somewhat around some of the same time. I am a child abuse survivor. And I started on a journey kind of around the same time that I went to graduate school, starting to heal from my trauma, my childhood trauma. It was stuff that I had never dealt with yet. And as I was processing through some of that stuff, I just realized that I got to be happy. Working as a nurse no longer made me happy. And part of my passion has since shifted from just traditional yoga to actually yoga for people who suffer anxiety, depression, trauma, PTSD, that kind of stuff. So I've even pivoted even more from traditional yoga into movement that has those benefits to help release the anxiety, the trauma, and the tension. Because part of it, I describe it as I felt like I couldn't breathe when I was at work. There was just this heaviness, this weight. I was worried that I was going to always hurt something bad was going to happen, living at that level of anxiety. And when I went into yoga, just the way my body felt, just like my shoulders were lower, tension was gone, and the physical difference in how I felt in my body was what gave me the courage to say, okay, now I want to figure out how to find this in my body more often than the tension, the weight, the heaviness.
Wow, wow. So had like a physiological like change, and you're like,
I
I need more of this, or I want this. And as you said too, like I get to be happy. Huh. Wow.
Right? Super profound. Yeah. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn. It's
Mm.
still taking some time. That's definitely not something that comes easy. Mhm.
I think for me, when I think about over the past couple of years, I've come to like kind of that awakening or self reckoning as well. It's like again with seeing so much like death, fear, chaos. It's made me question a lot of things. Like, do I need to allow that to stress me out? Do I need to be in a place where I'm not fulfilled? What does my career look like? What are my personal goals look like? What type of footprint do I want to leave? And also, too, how have things in the past, maybe how have I allowed them to keep me stuck in a certain environment, or how have I allowed for fear to prevent me from moving on to the next? You talked about being a child abuse survivor, and the connection with movement. And you have a very unique, or a term that I'm not familiar with, trauma informed yoga. Tell
Yes.
us what that is. How does it work? And if that's something, can we all apply that? Like, give us the details.
Great question. Yes, I love to talk about this. Trauma informed yoga is a special training that there's various different ones. I did my training with an organization, a brilliant organization called Collective Resilience Yoga. And their program is set up. I've done 150 hours of study of learning the nervous system, how movement can impact the nervous system, and going really heavy into that. So trauma informed yoga is yoga that is, let me rephrase that. The way I teach trauma informed yoga is that trauma informed yoga is for everybody. I often get asked, well, Angie, I don't have big trauma like your child abuse. That doesn't really apply to me. And my response is, to be trauma informed is to be human informed. all of us have some level of trauma, whether we realize it or not. Some people have trauma with a big T, and that's things like child abuse, homelessness, domestic abuse, violence, death, that kind of stuff. That is typically defined as trauma with a big T. Trauma with a little t are some of those smaller events or events that happen over and over again that we kind of dismiss as, well, that's just normal parts of growing up, or that's just normal, being a human. I always say that trauma is a tornado of energy trapped in a stationary body. And so anybody who has this swirling sense of emotional angst or itchiness and can't get it out, that is trauma. There's something stuck inside of there. And so trauma-informed yoga is designed to provide ways of moving that help folks to be able to release some of that tornado of energy, to find sensations in their body in ways that maybe they don't. A lot of us in today's world, we're fantastic at multitasking. We can do 500 different things. And yet being in our body and being still, or learning how to be in our body, is something that can be very uncomfortable for many of us, because that means we have to stop, we have to feel, we have to sense some of that tornado of energy. And so trauma-informed yoga is designed to provide options, opportunity, choices, ways for folks to start to tap into feeling some of that discomfort of being in the body and feeling that tornado of energy, but in a fun and safe and comfortable way. I offer a lot of playful movements. So I do a lot of playful movement. So I have moved even somewhat, I've combined things that are not yoga. So the way that I teach is a lot of non-traditional movements, meaning not Tai Chi, not yoga. I add a lot of play into it. So playful movements are a way, think of children just playing and letting their bodies do whatever they want to do. And when we as adults learn how to do that, we can release some of that tornado of energy or that trauma that's trapped inside of us. Trauma-informed yoga is really about learning how to come back to your center, how to ground down, and how to navigate those times when we do get activated, when we do feel uncomfortable or things get really uncomfortable, and then to shift through it.
Okay, what's coming to my mind is, for people who have tried yoga before, I'm speaking of myself,
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
people, and they feel like they haven't just been able to get into it, but they hear of all of the benefits and how it's therapeutic. Where would you suggest people like myself, where should we start or start again?
Yes, that is a really good question. And yoga is just like anything else. You may have tried it with a teacher that didn't resonate with you. For me personally, yoga classes that are very slow, that are very kind of ooey and gooey, almost make me want to peel my skin off. I need yoga classes that have more movement. And that just is based on my nervous system. So I would recommend starting with maybe a different teacher. Maybe it was just the teacher style that didn't work for you. If you tried it online, I might recommend maybe trying it in studio, because it's a different environment. If you tried it in studio and you felt really uncomfortable, maybe try a private lesson. I do recommend a lot of times, because when people are starting something and they don't feel comfortable with it, and then you have someone else who's right next to you who's doing, a finger stand upside down with their toes wrapped around their neck, it can be really daunting. And so trying a private lesson or trying a different style, taking a trauma-informed class that is very different. It's much more open, allows more options. And then I'm going to plug myself here, or come try one of my movement classes. I do movement that's not traditional yoga, but takes a lot of what the benefits of doing yoga and movement are, and puts it into a different style of moving. So it could just be the style of movement. So if you don't want to come to me, totally fine. Maybe try Tai Chi or something else, because it's any type of movement that brings that rhythm, that repetition, that kind of attention to mind body is where the benefit comes in.
Hmm. So for the trauma informed yoga? Is it solo? Is it group? Do you see clients or um, practitioners? Do people like get very emotional? Is it triggering? How does that work if someone is like, as after hearing, the definition of or how you define trauma, like, that's me. But I'm concerned or maybe just private and I don't know that I would want to like have all of my emotions spill out in front of a class or is that what it does? Like I'm curious, like what have you seen people experience as they're having this form of yoga?
Great question. And the answer is it can be done in classes, it can be done in small group settings, it can be done private one on one. So there's as much variety. I've seen people in traditional yoga classes break down and cry.
Mm,
Well, I myself have broken down in traditional yoga classes at the end of the class. Like that's a way to release energy. And so it would be fairly common, especially as I was working on my journey to heal from childhood, that at the end of class during shavasana or final resting pose, I'd be curled in the fetal position sobbing
mm.
because that was the only way that I could get some of that energy out. So I'm just going to tell you that can be very common. And when teachers see it, they, okay, they allow for that person to have that opportunity. For me, when I notice clients doing that, it does happen in groups. So that is a possibility. And usually at the end, it doesn't always happen at the end. I've actually had clients break down in the middle of a class. And part of trauma informed yoga is the instructor creating a safe space where someone feels okay that they can put their head down and have their moment and then come back and join the class. But for someone who's very uncomfortable, hesitant, unsure, doesn't want to let that out in front of others, I definitely recommend private lessons. Not only that, private lessons, when I work one-on-one with clients, we can get into some of that deeper stuff if you want to release it. So I tell people that a class is kind of a light level of release. A private
Mm.
lesson would be a bigger level of release if that's what you want.
Got it. Got it. And speaking of release, so one of the things I've also heard is that one of the most, if not the most important part of yoga is the breath. Like, what's the connection that you would say that's between the breath as well as the movement? What's the connection and how are, I guess, yoga and meditation are similar or different?
Great question. Yes. So technically, yoga has 8 different limbs to it. There's 8 different components to yoga. In the West, we typically call yoga the asanas or the movement portion of it.
Oh, okay.
Meditation is one of those 8 limbs of yoga. So meditation is a big part. In fact, traditional yoga, you don't learn how to do the asanas or the postures until you've learned how to sit in meditation. We kind of have changed that up here in the West. So they're interchangeable. They're both components of yoga. And the importance of linking the breath to movement is a couple of things. When we breathe in, this is just humans in general. When we breathe in, our body automatically goes into our fight or flight system. And when we breathe out, our body automatically goes into our rest and digest system. So we can never be in fight or flight and rest and digest at the same time.
Hmm.
And you can check that out by just checking your pulse and doing it a few times, breathing in and breathing out. You're going to notice it goes faster when you breathe in, slower when you breathe out. So part of linking the movement to the breath is learning how to regulate that nervous system. So to slow the in breath down, to slow the out breath down as a way to help regulate and find more of that slow rest and digest, to not go so much into the fight or flight part of our nervous system. Having said that, trauma informed yoga, it does not always link breath with the movement. In fact, we'll oftentimes give the option. For a lot of trauma survivors, particularly sexual assault survivors, listening or focusing on the breath is actually more triggering because that brings back memories. And so in trauma informed yoga, it's more about giving permission to move at whatever rhythm you want, whether it's with the breath or without.
Good. That's good. I had no idea about that the breath because I was thinking too, like sometimes the more I'm like breathing, I'm sitting with my thoughts. or I'm sitting, and to your point, it brings back up whether it be good or bad memories. It brings those things up. So I'm sitting with it. And then also too, I'm thinking like, okay, well, how do you not dwell on that if you are focusing on that breath? And also too, I'm thinking of, when I think of anxiety, people that have like racing thoughts. So how are you able to like calm the mind? Because I feel like I'm one of those people who like I have a million thoughts a minute, and I think one of the reasons why it's been challenging for me to like really adopt a regular practice, and thank you for that tip on just trying out different
Mhm.
styles, different
Mhm.
teachers or instructors. But I think for me, it's like calming my mind. I have yet haven't been able to get into the place where my mind is even relaxed to like get in. I don't know if the term is like flow. So
Well, so I am the same way. I am a person that has a lot of energy. I don't know if you can tell. So things are always moving. Yeah. People, you can tell. I know people can tell just from my voice. And my mind is like that. My body is like that. So I'm one of those people that can't sit in meditation. But if I find some sort of gentle movement to be able to do, that actually gives my mind something to think about. Right arm, left arm, whatever it is that I'm doing, and then that can actually quiet it down. When I
mhm.
get really nervous or when I'm anxious, when I'm agitated, I just add a sway side to side in my body, standing, sitting, anything like that, any sort of movement that's repetitive, that's rhythmic, is actually very soothing to the nervous system for all of us humans, for mammals in general, actually. Think of a baby in a rocker swing. It's kind of the same thing with adults. So, sitting in meditation maybe is very challenging for you because you do have all those racing thoughts. So, to add a side to side sway or, lift one arm and then the other, something like that can actually really bring that regulation to the nervous system that just focusing on the breath can't or is so challenging for.
Oh, that's good. And you're ahead of me because I was going to ask you, maybe you have an additional one. So for someone that's listening that says, okay, what's one easy or simplistic movement I can add or start doing today? Something that's easy and simple. Like if I'm dealing with my own anxiety, racing thoughts, what's something that they could start adding to their day?
Great question. I love this one. So I always say that the speed with which you go is determined by how much you have racing in here. So if you're
Mhm.
feeling really agitated, go faster. It doesn't have to
Oh,
be slow. That might actually create more tension. When I'm really agitated, slow movement is going to make me want to peel my skin off. But if I could do a movement faster, then that gets that energy out. And then all of a sudden, I switch into that rest and digest or parasympathetic nervous system. And I'm like, oh, okay, now I can go slow. So it's okay to go fast to get your energy out. Don't feel like you have to do this slow. That's one of the differences with the way I teach is I say, yeah, go fast, do what you need to do, go fast. So I'm saying that to say that this movement can be done at any speed, the one that I'm about to talk through. And what I like to do is it's just bringing your arms way out wide to the side, as wide as you want. And then bringing your arms back in together, maybe holding hands, maybe grabbing elbows. Maybe if you even want, give yourself a hug. And then once again, arms opening wide. You can move with the breath. If you want to move with the breath, it's inhale, arms wide, exhale, maybe crossing the elbows the other side, giving yourself a hug. And then I always add, give a little shake, a little shimmy, like you're hugging someone that you love. And then just flowing through that as many times as you want, as fast as you want. Maybe you're feeling some depression and you don't want to move big. Totally fine. Maybe just try your fingers opening wide and then coming back together, and then maybe add that little shake. And then opening wide, coming back together. If you have anxiety, you have a lot going on, open faster. Open, close. It's all about learning what your body needs to settle down and not necessarily doing what someone else is instructing. So I always, when I cue that, that's one of my favorite things to teach in one of my classes is the arms open wide and then coming in, giving yourself some love. Um, And the shake is important because that just kind of shimmies. And I always say, go whatever speed you want. Maybe go faster, maybe go slower, and explore. Notice as you move through the different paces what that does to your body.
I'm like just sitting here in awe because I needed this. This is so good. Like you ever, I was excited about having this conversation, but like to walk away with like these type of takeaways, like I needed this. I'm gonna start doing this today. And what you said, just like I was like, okay, I feel like it's even more freeing because I feel like I've been in environments or classes, and to your point, it's like I need to like let this out. So going faster and as you were talking about the slow pace, and I'm like, that just like you said makes my skin crawl. I'm like, let's go. So thank you. It's almost like I feel like I just got permission to do what I need to do.
That's a big component for trauma informed yoga, is allowing people that permission and then the space. So if a teacher says you can do whatever you want, but then you're doing your own thing and they're giving you kind of a stern look, it makes you feel uncomfortable. So me, I welcome it. I've done yoga for years, and I had to do heated, hot, fast, at like the most intensive type of yoga, or else I would peel my skin off. And so, yeah, maybe if you haven't gotten into yoga, it might just not have been fast enough for you. You might have one of those nervous systems that are active and need a little more movement. And that's totally fine. It's about giving yourself permission to be happy in a movement and to find what works for your body, more than anyone else does.
Yeah. That's why I started with the shake, pop, drop, boot. Like, yeah, I need something a little more faster, speed it up, speed that. Okay, that is good to know. Now that I know.
We dance all the time in my movement and yoga classes. That is a big one that I love to do. Dance it, pop it. I do a drop it like it's hot, because it is all about finding ways, and play and fun and that kind of stuff makes it easier to get that out.
Love it, love it, love it. Angie, before I ask my final question,
Yes.
where can the listeners find you online?
Yes, absolutely. I I'm a little hard to find because my name is AB Yoga. And if you go and Google AB Yoga, you are going to find probably 10 billion abdominal yoga workouts. And so just know I am AB Yoga, but my website is abyogainfo.com, because I like to share a lot of information if you haven't gathered that. And then all of my social media handles are something very similar to, or are that. It's on Facebook and YouTube, it's AB Yoga Info. And then on Instagram, it's AB_yoga_info.
Perfect, perfect. And the final question is, what is the greatest lesson you've learned in your reset?
I've learned I get to be happy.
Mm.
That is really the most profound thing that I feel like I've learned, that I get to be happy and I get to choose to be happy.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. That is phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Raven, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Do what your body needs and not always what someone else is instructing. Go whatever at whatever speed you need, and I get to be happy. Everyone, the reset party does not stop here. Share this with someone who is in need of their own reset. And remember, a reset is always available to you.